There's a 32-ton cement mixer hanging off the side of my mountain right now like a drunk metal dinosaur that made one bad decision too many. And it's been there for 11 days. The driver vanished. The HOA's lawyers keep leaving me these syrupy, polite voicemails I'm not answering. And the smell of diesel bleeding down toward my creek tells me this mess is about to become everybody's problem, not just mine. That truck didn't end this story. It exposed it. My name's Garrett Voss. I own 47 acres on Saddleback Ridge in western Colorado. And if you've ever wondered how a homeowners association can convince itself your private land is basically community property, pull up a chair. Because this one took 4 years, a stack of public records, one retired civil engineer, and a cement mixer that ignored a very clear warning sign. I grew up in Pueblo, the son of a pipe fitter and a school bus driver who didn't call in sick for 22 years. We weren't connected, we weren't rich, and nobody ever handed us anything except advice. My father had one line he repeated so many times I can still hear it in his voice. Buy land they can't make more of near water, they can't move. So when I finally scraped together enough money after 12 years in commercial HVAC and more side hustles than I care to list, I bought Saddleback Ridge. 47 acres of Headwater Creek cutting across the northeast corner, a beat-up little cabin that needed almost everything but still felt like mine the minute I stepped inside. Clean title, no liens, no recorded easements, no surprises. At least that's what I thought. Next door to my east sat Saddleback Estates. Neat rows of vinyl-sided homes, HOA newsletters, holiday lights, competitions, rules about what color your fence could be, that kind of place. I didn't hate them. Most of the people were fine. Waved when I drove by, minded their business, lived their lives. My problem wasn't the residents. My problem was that their only paved access road flooded every spring, and for years the board had been trying to find an alternate route. That alternate route just happened to cut across the lower corner of my property. The previous owner, a retired school teacher named Dwight, had been casual about it. Didn't lock his gate, didn't care much who drove through. But neighborly tolerance isn't hereditary. Dwight moved to Flagstaff, I bought the land, and whatever informal handshake arrangement had existed died right there with the sale. At first it was subtle. Survey flags showing up near my fence. A polite letter from the HOA's management company asking whether I'd be open to formalizing existing access. Another from a title company wanting to discuss an easement for the benefit of the broader community. Then a note from the County Roads Department suggesting recorded access over my tract might serve the public interest. That one made me sit up straight. A county office writing to me on behalf of a private HOA. That's the kind of thing that makes a man start his own file folder. The woman behind most of it was the HOA president, Dolores Fitch. 61, former real estate broker, white Cadillac SUV, floral perfume you could smell before she reached the porch. She had that polished way of talking where every power grab sounds like a civic duty. The first time she came to my place, she drove right through my open gate parked by my barn, stepped out with a manila folder and said, "Mr. Voss, the community has really been counting on this access." I said, "Ma'am, the community doesn't own this land." That was the nicest conversation we ever had. After that came more letters, more pressure, more little attempts to make it all sound inevitable. I sat at my kitchen table one night, pine top still smelling faintly of linseed oil, and started reading Colorado easement law. Turns out if they wanted to claim a prescriptive easement, they needed long, continuous qualifying use. They didn't have it. Their attorneys knew they didn't have it, which is why nobody was suing me. They were trying to wear me down until I signed something stupid. So I wrote back one sentence, sent it certified, and kept the green card. There is no existing easement over my property, and I am not entertaining the creation of one. 2 weeks later, orange survey flags appeared again, this time inside my fence line. I photographed every one of them before I pulled them. I photographed footprints in the soft dirt boot treads from at least 2 people. I filed a trespass report with the sheriff. The deputy was friendly, wrote it up, gave me that rural shrug people give when they think a problem will sort itself out on its own. It did not. Dolores went to a county budget hearing and during public comment described me as an uncooperative out-of-state investor blocking emergency access for Saddleback Estates. That's the moment she made her first real mistake, because public meetings are recorded, archived, and very easy to request if you know how paperwork works. I requested the transcript the next day. What she said wasn't just dramatic, it was false. The main road worked most of the year. During peak flood weeks, the county already had a gravel bypass. We were talking about an extra 4 minutes on a commute, not ambulances being stranded in a disaster movie. But she said it on the record anyway, probably figuring nobody would bother checking. That was when I stopped thinking in terms of irritation and started thinking in terms of pattern. Then the developer showed up, Rupert Caswell. Tan in that expensive outdoor money way, turquoise bolo tie smile, warm enough to seem friendly and cold enough to make you count your fingers after a handshake. He knocked technically, he honked from the cattle guard and pitched me a temporary construction easement. 6 months, maybe 8. They'd improve my track leave it better than they found it. Everybody wins. I asked him one question: what weight class are your haul vehicles? He told me fully loaded cement mixers were around 66,000 pounds gross. That mattered because 18 months earlier I'd had a geotechnical survey done on the lower crossing of my track where seasonal drainage cut through clay-heavy ground with a high water table. The report said the crossing couldn't safely handle heavy commercial traffic without engineered remediation. In plain English, send a loaded mixer over that spot, and sooner or later gravity was going to have an opinion. Rupert smiled thinner after that. A couple weeks later, the county planning department suddenly developed a deep and suspicious interest in my property. 3 complaints in 6 weeks, my shed, my cattle guard, some imaginary stream crossing issue, all nonsense. So I filed a public records request for every complaint submitted on my parcel in the past year. 6 days later, I had the answer. All 3 complaints came from the Saddleback Estates HOA Management Company's email domain. That's when I knew I wasn't dealing with misunderstanding. I was dealing with coordinated pressure, bureaucratic harassment dressed up like procedure. Most people right there would have hired a lawyer and started firing off angry letters. Believe me, I thought about it. But anger is loud, and loud people often show their hand too early. I wanted the full picture first. Every letter, every photo, every footprint, every recorded lie. My father would have called it stack building. Then came the twist that changed everything. My neighbor to the west, Thaddeus Burke, got pulled into this because I figured sooner or later I'd need a witness who understood more than fence lines and gut feelings. Thad was 72, a retired civil engineer, patient in that dangerous way smart older men can be. He'd had his own battle with Saddleback Estates years earlier. So when I called and said, I think I'm going to need a witness, he said, already figured. A few weeks after the fake complaints, I was going through a pile of county drainage records I'd requested earlier. Mostly boring stuff. Utility permits, old waivers paper designed to make a man sleepy. Then I found a recorded plat note from 1987 tied to the original Saddleback Estates development. That dry little paragraph hit like lightning. It described a 30-foot drainage maintenance corridor along the edge of what is now my property. Not a road easement, not a haul route, a drainage corridor. And it said no roadway improvements could be built there without written consent from the downstream property authority. Back then, that authority was a conservation district. When that district dissolved, its interest transferred to the county, meaning the HOA didn't just need me, they needed the county too. And nobody, not the HOA, not Rupert, not the county during permit review, had dealt with that restriction. Thad read that plat 3 times over my kitchen table, adjusted his glasses, and said, Garrett, this doesn't just block the road. This potentially blows up Caswell's drainage approval for the whole project. There it was. The thing nobody had bothered to read because everybody assumed muscle and momentum would beat paper. That's when I finally hired Rosalind Pruitt out of Pueblo, a real estate attorney, with a calm voice and the kind of neat desk that should terrify dishonest people. Together we did 3 things. We formally notified the county of the 1987 restriction. We sent cease and desist letters to the HOA and Rupert Caswell citing trespass and interference. And I recorded notice of my ownership dispute so any lender or title search would see this mess attached to the file. Then Thad and I documented the crossing itself. Proper load assessment photographs, engineering notes, the works. Safe load, about 8,000 pounds. Planned traffic, 66,000. I installed a gate, posted no trespassing signs, mounted game cameras, and put up a professional warning sign just inside my fence. Load limit, 8,000 pounds, CE, inspection on file. Not dramatic, just clear. And because I've been alive long enough to know sunlight is sometimes stronger than law, I quietly tipped off a reporter in a local TV station that there might be an interesting land use story developing on Saddleback Ridge. Then I waited. Early October, my gate camera pinged. Flatbed truck traffic cones survey crew. They stayed right on the county edge, careful boys, but they left something hanging on my gate in a bright orange waterproof tube construction plans. Plans showing my private track labeled as the proposed haul route, widened, graded, and fitted with a new culvert crossing. Rosalind filed for a temporary restraining order. The judge granted it fast. That should have been enough for any sane person. It was not enough for Dolores Fitch and Rupert Caswell. The cement mixer came in mid-October, just after first cold settled in that sharp cedar and frost smell in the air. My phone buzzed with footage from the camera pickups, a water truck, and a Schwing transit mixer rolling up to my gate at 7:22 in the morning. By 7:31, somebody had cut my padlock. I called 911, then Rosalind. By the time I got down the track, the mixer had already crossed the gate line, ignored the load limit sign, and pushed onto that old culvert crossing like physics was an optional opinion. I heard it before I fully saw it, that deep, ugly, grinding sound of overloaded gravel and wet soil giving up. Then the upstream side let go. The rear axles dropped into the embankment, the nose lifted, and 32 tons of bad judgment settled at a miserable angle over my creek. Nobody got hurt. That matters. I'm glad for it. The driver climbed out pale and silent. Diesel stung the back of my throat. I asked, "You okay?" He nodded. I said, "Did you see the load limit sign?" He looked at the truck, then at me, and said the gate was unlocked. I held up the cut padlock. The sheriff arrived. The county roads engineer arrived. And then, because apparently the universe enjoys timing, Dolores Fitch came down the slope in heels, looked at the truck hanging there like a public monument to arrogance, and hissed, "This is your fault." I said, "My sign says 8,000 pounds. How much does that truck weigh?" She didn't answer. An hour later, Rupert showed up. Behind Rosalind came the reporter I'd called camera operator with her, and just like that, the private pressure campaign became public theater. That truck sat there for 11 days. Recovery required a specialized crane from Denver. The contractor got the bill. Their insurance carrier later fought coverage because the operator had driven past a visible warning sign onto private land without permission. Not my circus. Deeply satisfying monkeys, though. But the real ending came 2 weeks later at the county commissioners' meeting. Packed room. Folding chairs spilling into the hallway. TV camera in the corner. Rosalind with her binder. Me in the third row trying to look calmer than I felt. She walked the room through the 1987 plat, the defective drainage approval, the trespass history, the coordinated complaints, the game camera photos, including one where Dolores's white Cadillac sat at the edge of frame like a signature. The county attorney confirmed the approval process had missed a recorded restriction. Caswell's attorney tried to wriggle out of it. Failed. Commissioner Ortega asked whether the HOA had authorized the false complaints. Their lawyer stalled. Ortega said, "Your client is in this room." You could feel the air tighten. Then came the line that ended it all, pending construction activity. In that drainage corridor was suspended, and the county would conduct a full administrative review. He apologized to me on the record in front of everybody. Not triumph. That's not quite the word for what I felt. Relief, mostly. Because here's the truth I learned from all of it: land doesn't defend itself. Water doesn't defend itself. And rights you don't document are rights somebody with a smile and a committee will try to reinterpret. The world is full of people who think power means permission. Sometimes the only thing that stops them is one boring old document, one patient witness, and a person stubborn enough to keep reading when everybody else wants a shortcut. Dolores resigned the next month. Caswell lost a full construction season and had to refinance at a worse rate. The project eventually got approved in a scaled-down form with a legal access road that goes nowhere near my property. The HOA got a new president, a decent guy named Marcus, and months later, to his credit, the board kicked in money toward a conservation easement protecting 12 acres of my creek corridor forever. So the creek is safe now. No haul road, no commercial disturbance, no heavy equipment crossing there ever again. And the spot where that cement mixer sank, I left it mostly alone. Planted willow cuttings along the bank. Let the roots do what roots do. Nature's better at long-term revenge than people are. So let me ask you this. When somebody in a suit or on a board or behind a government desk decides your property, your peace, or your rights are just obstacles to their plan, how far do you think a person should go to stop them? Where's the line between justice and payback? Drop your take in the comments. And if you've ever dealt with an OA, a county board, a developer, or just one pushy neighbor with too much confidence and not enough boundaries, tell me your story too. I want to hear how you handled it and whether you'd have done anything differently.